Welcome to a Google Hangout about the Night News Challenge on elections. This is Steve Clift. I'm the engagement lead with the Poplus.org project and also the executive director of eDemocracy. And we traded some notes with some of our good friends at the Knight Foundation about whether we could have a little exchange of questions and answers about the Night News Challenge. We've done some outreach via the Poplus Network, via the Code for America Brigade Network, and so I have a mix of people from different countries that have come together to ping questions at Chris Barr from the Knight Foundation. Our format is going to be pretty simple for the first chunk of our call. We're going to allow folks to introduce themselves and ask a question. That'll be preceded by, obviously, Chris Barr from the Knight Foundation introducing himself and the News Challenge in however many minutes you'd like to use to introduce the News Challenge and the theme. Once we get through the round of introductions and the questions in between, then we'll be for an open Q&A. If you use Twitter and you tweet pound or #Poplus #News Challenge, I'll be able to watch for those. We don't expect a large live audience, but we can even look afterwards for any on-demand questions that might come in order to have any questions that might come in from Twitter. And so I'll be responsible to monitor those and bring those back into the group. So welcome everyone to this Hangout, and it's a bit of an experiment. Hopefully the technology will all work out for us. We're glad to have you here to watch us. So Chris, I want to have you take it away. This is Chris Barr from the Knight Foundation. Tell us about the News Challenge on elections.
Well, thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Barr from the Knight Foundation. I'm the director of our Media Innovation Program. And working with our colleagues over on the journalism team, along with 3 partners, the Democracy Fund, the Rita Allen Foundation, and the Hewlett Foundation, we've launched the 13th News Challenge, this time on the topic of elections, with a really broad question to sort of pique people's interest and get ideas. That question is, how might we better inform voters and increase civic participation before, during, and after elections? Now, a couple things I would say about that question. When we were in the ramp-up to launching this challenge, we brought a bunch of people down to Miami to talk to us about elections, a bunch of journalists, a bunch of civic technologists, and people who are working in this space to get their opinions on, what can we do to help put some energy into this topic and get people thinking outside of the box. And we got lots of great feedback from, there's a need for some new tools in the newsroom, right, to better inform people before an election happens. There's a need to make the experience of voting better, and certainly we look at technology to help us do those sorts of things. But also, people were telling us, it's great to get people to vote and to understand the candidates, but how do we turn the potential energy of an election into some sort of long-term civic engagement? So is there a way to think about this as a longer process than one with a definitive endpoint of Election Day? So that's the way we've sort of created this question that has that sort of before, during, and after, looking at all pieces of this process and how to create informed and engaged folks around these topics, how to get people politically and civically involved in their communities, and those sorts of things. Obviously, we're coming up on a big 2016 election in the U.S. at the federal level, and certainly we're interested in ideas around how to better inform people there, but we're also really interested in a local and community level. Knight Foundation was founded by folks in the newspaper industry that came from communities, reported from a community perspective, and have a deep interest in making communities better places and having people act civically on the behalf of their community. So we know that there's a lot of opportunity in local elections. There's a lot more that we could be doing, and compared to the national elections, it's much, much harder to learn about what's happening in your local races. So I think we can make some good headway there. I know we have international folks on the phone, and we'll probably have the international question. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about how we tend to approach international applicants. The News Challenge is open to anyone, literally anyone in the world, and you probably noticed that the word America shows up in the brief on this challenge, and certainly we're a foundation that's U.S. based. We have deep involvement in night cities. You can find a list of them on our site, and we care about being active participants in those communities. And so we have a strong domestic interest. Where we've done international funding through the challenge before, we do think it's an opportunity to learn. Obviously, America, all of our problems aren't going to be solved in the U.S. There are brilliant people from around the world that are thinking about how to build strong democracies and how to make voting better. Obviously, there are countries that are using technology in ways that the U.S. isn't. I think the common example is a country like Estonia that's already doing online voting. So obviously there's a lot we can learn from the rest of the world, and where we have ideas that have that potential to explore new models that might be applicable in the U.S. down the road, we certainly want to give those consideration. But saying that, obviously we also have a deep domestic interest in the democracy that we're embedded within. So that'd be my intro. The application process for the News Challenge itself, we've designed to be as pain-free as possible. We know that a lot of folks, applying for a grant is maybe something that is stressful or hard or something that they've not done before, and we don't want this to feel like that. Instead, we ask 4 or 5 pretty simple questions. We ask you to tell us about your idea, tell us about the folks you're trying to impact, tell us who's on your team and what skills you have, and make it visual if you can, right? So some people, a lot of things can be explained better in a picture, so we have the ability for you to add images and video to your posts as well, and we encourage you to do that. We also encourage you to go ahead and submit earlier and not wait till the final hour of the deadline, and we know lots of people are going to hit the button right at the last minute, and that's fine too. The reason that we tell folks to go ahead and get their entries in early, unlike a lot of sort of grant processes, this is not a process where your entry is going into a black box and something's happening behind the scenes and you find out months later. Instead, the platform is designed to be really open. So when you publish your idea to the platform, it's there for folks to find and read. We really think that's a good opportunity for folks in the field to dig through those entries, whether they become winning entries or not, and have this sort of really fantastic box of ideas that they can pull from and meet folks and have conversations. The other reason we suggest going ahead and publishing once you've got something pretty solid put together is that those comments can be beneficial to you. So you might get a question in the comments, hey, I don't really understand X, Y, and Z. Can you explain that a little bit? You can respond in the comments, but you can also just hit edit and actually change and clarify things directly in the entry itself. So you can edit all the way through the feedback phase where we have reviewers looking at your applications. So that's another sort of unique thing about how we approach the challenge. So with that, maybe we can go ahead and open it up for questions, and I'd be happy to answer anything you guys are wondering about.
Well, thanks, Chris. I spent this morning reading about 30 of the little summaries, and I can tell you it's really nice that you ask people to explain it in a few sentences.
Yeah.
When you want to get that first glance, and it is notable, really, the wide diversity of approaches people are taking, and I'm sure we'll get that in our questions here. So I have a sort of a list of an order just for folks to introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Martin. Martin, so please introduce yourself, your organization, your country, and so on, and then ask your question, and then Chris will have a chance to respond as he would like.
Thanks, Steven. Hello, Chris. This is Martin from Argentina. I'm working on a project called Congreso Interactivo. Congreso Interactivo, it's a parliamentary monitoring application. We are based on the Poplus components. We started development May last year in a fellowship we had with Ciudadano Inteligente in Chile. And we are now part of the Poplus Federation, and we're working towards improving our website. Last week we had the State of the Union address from the President, and we covered that from our social network platforms, and we had many people interested going to see the profile of different representatives that were taking part on this event. We even had people download the whole list of projects that one representative presented. So we are pretty sure that we are doing a good job right now, and we are having elections. We are having the primaries, which are open and.
Say, Martin. Martin.
Sorry.
Could you just turn your video off, and that might improve your audio. Your audio is 90%, but we want to get it up to 95. Good. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Sorry. So I was telling you that this year we will have elections on August. We will have the primaries, which are open and mandatory for every citizen, and then in October we will have the general elections for president and representatives. So we're planning on doing some work here. And so the question I have is for projects, for proposals for the Night News Challenge that are led by organizations that are not based on the US. Which kind of properties the project should have that is more likely to be selected? Should we have an internationalized software that could be implemented in the US, or should we seek to have an alliance with a US-based organization, or should we make specific plans for the software to be implemented in the elections in the US? So tell me a bit about what are the possibilities we have to be set, and what will be your non-US based proposals?
Sure.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So I think you're onto it a bit. The example that I would give is actually a project that has won the News Challenge in the past. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the project Poderopedia, which started in Chile and has since, I believe, moved into a couple of other countries. And this is a piece of software that helps track relationships between government officials and other people of power. The thing about that project and sort of others that have worked is that they do have this ability to potentially scale or be a model that others utilize. And I think one of the interesting things, a lot of the folks here on the call are starting to work with similar components through the Poplus project from My Society and others. So I think a lot of you guys are already working in that spirit. You don't want to just build things that work for you, but you want to build things that work for you and then maybe work for others as well. And I think that's exactly the right direction. At this point in the game, we wouldn't ask you to have any sort of U.S. sponsor or partner or anything like that. We would look at that later in the process. Really, at this stage in the game, we just need the idea and an idea how that will take shape and who you expect it to impact.
Great. Chris, my video back here. The next person, I'm going to use my prerogative to mix it up here a little bit from the order that I had pre-assigned. I'd actually like to go to Leslie next, if that's all right, Leslie. We're going to kind of come into the U.S. now and have Leslie ask a question, and then we'll go back to you, Dave Whiteland, in a moment to introduce yourself. So, Leslie, take it away.
Sure. My name is Leslie Domi. I'm with a company called Civic Eagle, and what we are is a civic engagement, civic technology company, multi-platform company, producing products that will help engage citizens and improve how the public interacts with their government and communities, and approaching it in multiple ways. So we have a public-facing product called Eagle, which is our mobile application that connects users to legislation. It connects people to their legislators. It connects people to the news as well. But one of our best features, which is one of our most interesting features, I would say, is our debate feature. And we've incorporated micro video debating, similar to something like Vine, where we pose questions and users can record a short 20-second, 30-second video and watch and reply to other people's videos and debate each other through the platform. We also have another couple of other products. One is called Eagle Eye, and that's more for community-based organizations, elected officials, and candidates to interact with their constituents and their communities. And we have the future plans for expanding to an educational tool for like students at the high school and college level, and another platform to really personalize your civic experience. We've identified that increasing civic engagement and community engagement has to happen across multiple levels, and people need to be engaged, not just one-to-one. It's not just politicians to constituents. It's about interacting with your peers and other people in your community. It's about learning at a younger age the importance of being involved, and really breaking it down to understanding like how politics is really a day-to-day social experience, and not just a political experience. So my question is, we appreciate the opportunity. This is such a great contest, not just because the reward could be great in terms of the money that we could win. However, it's great because we're networking and have the opportunities to collaborate. And I think that's the real purpose of civic engagement. It's about sharing ideas. It's about understanding that it's not just about you as an individual, but it's about your community. And I appreciate that it's also been an international contest, and so you get to see how democracy is playing out in different countries and what people are doing, so that's awesome. So thank you for this opportunity. So our question is about looking at the applications. Could you talk about how past winners have distinguished themselves from the other applications? Like what components of the application really set them apart and made them winners?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks, Leslie, for your enthusiasm, and I think you speak really. You had a really nice way of sort of phrasing what we're trying to do. There are a couple things I would say about the application that I think would benefit folks who want to make themselves stand out. The first thing is you have to realize that we'll have reviewers looking at up to 100 applications, and after reading about 10 applications on a niche subject, your brain starts to get a little mushy. So it's really, really important for folks to really think about jargon and how they're actually writing the content of their application. I actually suggest people do, something we do at Knight Foundation internally. We have an ongoing lecture series internally called Write at Night, where we ourselves try to be better writers, even on the internal documents that are only seen by us. because we come out of a journalistic tradition and we think writing is really important. But we actually look at the flesh score of everything that we write, right? So we see what grade level we're writing at and try to make it understandable by as many people as possible. Some of our reviewers are not technologists, right? So remember that including jargon, if you get too deep into the technical stuff, that might be hard for people to really understand. So it's really about, one, identifying, here's a thing that we've observed in the world. Here's the specific group of people that we think are impacted by it, and here's how we think we can change the situation for those people. And then, as you outline your solution, talking about the folks that you have to solve that problem and how you're well aligned to be the people to solve that problem, I think becomes important, especially in the later stages of the contest, when we'll, at the end of the finalist stage, we actually meet folks in person and meet the teams, and those things become even more important at that stage. So it's really about talking about that specific problem that you're trying to solve, and how you're aligned, and think the idea that you're proposing will solve that actual real world problem.
Thank you, Chris. So as we work our way through the agenda, we're going to keep our intros a little bit more concise so we get more questions in, but it's been really inspiring to hear folks talk about their projects. So next up, we're going to have Dave Whiteland say hello and ask his question. Dave?
Hi, I'm Dave Whiteland from My Society. I'm on the international team, and I'm lucky because I've met some of the guys on this call before, and as we were saying, even drank beer with them, which is always a great way to start any of these projects. So My Society is one of the founding members of the Poplus group. I think we're quite well known in this kind of world. In the UK, we're well known for our parliamentary monitoring site, theyworkforyou.com. Of course, we run Fix My Street, and also the Freedom of Information site, whatdotheyknow.com. But specifically for this, we have an election coming up this year, and as part of that, we're running a site in conjunction with a group called Democracy Club, called Your Next MP, where MP is your Member of Parliament, or the representatives in the UK in the House of Commons. The specific problem that this is addressing is in the UK, you can decide to stand for Parliament remarkably late in the day. So there is no easy way to get a list of candidates of people who are standing until actually maybe about 10 or 12 days before the election is due is when they actually slam the town gate, the doors on the town halls, and you can't apply. This has all kinds of problems for people deciding how to become informed as to which way to vote. So last year we ran, last election we ran a Your Next MP project which crowdsourced the data and was remarkably successful. Incidentally, we're talking about 650 seats in the election. In 2010, when this last happened, we found data for 4,150 candidates. The thing that's different this year is that through Poplus we now have a tool called Popit, which is a database for collecting and representing fundamentally politicians, which is a slightly more complicated problem than people realise because of the business about politicians' history and them belonging to parties and switching and changing and coalitions and so on. So anyway, we have this, the summary, because I know I have to keep this brief, otherwise Steve will never drink beer with me again, is we have this tool which is the back end to the site which has already been running. We are 2 months away from the election, and we already have, based on last election's figures, about 70% of the candidates we think we've got data for already. This week, the national paper, The Telegraph, ran an article about the election, and they cited Your Next MP as the source because we were able to show that last time we actually had, through crowdsourcing, more accurate information than the paid-for services that sell this data to journalists. Specifically, it seems to be, on the face of it, relevant because of the unique business in the UK of not knowing who's standing until the very end, and that the government doesn't provide this information. But actually, of course, it's bigger than this. It's about crowdsourcing any group of candidates before any election. Because it's a Poplus component, it's already internationalized, so it can cope with the way that you speak over there in the US. Which is, I'm hitting back there because all our spell checks use your language now anyway. But and so this comes up to the question, which is, in my work in the international team at my society, we know that the software is not really where this is happening. What really comes down to is the teams running these projects, and how they have to be customized for the domain in which they're running. And in this experience, we found that we had to change Pop-it a bit because prospective candidates are different from standing MPs. So we've already learned some of this. But I know from my international work that culturally, on the ground, you need to have local groups who are really running the show. You can do the technical support and write brilliant software, but that's what you need. So my question is, what kind of local support would an international group get? Something like this? Would NITE provide the contacts for us to work with all the fabulous groups that we know are over there, such as, I mean, it could fit in with your cities, obviously, and things like that?
Yeah. So the thing to, we're not an operational foundation, so there's a distinction in the U.S. between different types of foundations, and at the end of the day, our main responsibility is on the funding side. What we do try to do is be as helpful as we can with those kinds of introductions and sort of helping people find contacts that they need in order to be successful at their projects. And I know it would be quite a challenge, from the UK to be able to effectively find the right partners in the US and start to achieve those goals. So I don't think, it's not something that I would want to commit NITE to be responsible for. I think it's really helpful if you have those relationships already, or those relationships are developing through the challenge, rather than having to find those commitments after the fact, after the funding has, a grant has been made. So there's sort of limited amounts of that we can be helpful with, but obviously within the NITE cities we're very well connected, and we can obviously do introductions there, and we try as much as possible to connect people to useful collaborators and advisors. One other thing I'd mention about the News Challenge that makes it a little bit different than the other funding that we typically do, is that with each News Challenge we get a group of winners that sort of come out the other end as a bit of a cohort. So there's a little bit more of a cohort experience to being a News Challenge winner than just being a random sort of grant that we might make where you're sort of floating a little bit more on your own. So we do pull those winners together and create some peer networking opportunities and do our best to sort of make a little community out of those News Challenge winners. And the fact that we've started to theme the challenges more, I think, makes that even more beneficial. So getting this group of winners together who are all passionate about the same topic, I think will really be beneficial to those folks, and hopefully organically we find some good networking opportunities and ability for people to collaborate.
All right, so speaking of networking, I'd like to bring up David Moore, who I've been networking with over the years. So David, why don't you introduce yourself briefly and then ask a question.
Hey everyone, thanks Steve. Hi Chris, good to be on the line with all of you. My name is David. I'm the ED of the Participatory Politics Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization based in New York City. I'm actually here in the boardroom of Civic Hall, which is the new Civic Technology Hub, and where recently there was a great News Challenge event that had a full auditorium of folks asking questions to Jen Preston of the NITE Foundation and other of the staff. So I can vouch that there's great interest on this elections topic, and lots of organizations here at Civic Hall are interested in applying. I'm going to be applying for a couple of ideas that we have. The first is our current project is Ask Them, which is questions and answers with elected officials in the U.S. So it would be a great way to do crowdsourced debate around the 2016 elections and other. And also a proposal we have for Councilmatic, which is like a version of opencongress.org for city legislation. So making what's happening in city government easier to track and share. So we hope that that'll improve people's access to information around elections in a more user-friendly way. And that brings me to my question for Chris, which is that recently the Knight Foundation put out a great study about how local news can impact election perception and turnout. And I want to sort of put generally, since I know you can't get into too many specifics, what sorts of broad areas do local news organizations, could they use to focus on around the question of improving election participation? I was going to ask what kinds of digital tools do they need, but that's sort of more specific, I guess. Maybe broader areas of how local news sees its role in this field would help the proposal. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean that actually might be a better question to pose to some of our folks on the journalism team, which would have a better knowledge of what those folks are working with. What we do know is that things like exit polls become really challenging. Tracking money in politics is really difficult, and all of these sort of common problems that folks are facing on cycles, right, and constantly having to reinvent how they do their work in the newsroom each time the election cycle comes up. So we think, on the newsroom side, there's a really big opportunity for some collaboration and some work that will help sort of make that work more efficient. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, though, David. If there was a specific piece of that I'm missing out on.
No, that's great. Those are the areas that I was looking for clarity on. Thanks, and thanks, Steve, for the invite.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so next up is I'm going to have James Baster from, you're in Scotland, is that right, James?
Yes, based in Edinburgh.
All right, well, take it away.
Cool, okay, so hello, so I'm James Baster, based in Scotland, and for the upcoming general election, I'm doing Meet Your Next MP, which is a crowdsourced community calendar of all the election events that are coming up, and this is something we've done before in other areas, and we're now seeing if it applies to elections. And this is, by the way, using the data from Your Next MP, so it's a good example of the reuse of these open data projects. I guess I wanted to quickly ask what kind of outcome and output measuring are you expecting projects to do? And also, it's a very quick question as well, how strict are you being about the 3-sentence limit on the application form? Because I've seen quite a lot that broke that.
Oh. Yeah, so we're not tracking punctuation, so I think people might be able to get away a little bit on that. I don't know that it's to their advantage, but so as far as tracking, right, after the fact, once we've decided on winners, we do that on a project per project basis, right? So we're really working with the projects to help identify the metrics that are most meaningful to them and that relate to the success of their project. We may, in this case, be able to look a little bit more around metrics that, as the cohort, there might be some things that if each project is measuring and tracking some similar things, we might be able to learn a little bit more. So we'll certainly look to see if there's an opportunity for that. But really, it's on a project to project basis as far as what sort of results and impact we try to track.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, so next up, I'd like to have Javier introduce himself and ask his question. Javier?
Hello, this is Javier Carranza. I am working right now in Colombia. I am working with the Geocensus Foundation. We're a huge community, or important community of developers on geoinformation tools and topics, and we mostly focus on territorial issues such as participative mapping and other participation issues. So we're interested in being part of this project again, and our idea was to get several entries of projects. Our question is oriented to generally cooperation projects spoken before. You spoke about, for instance, Quadropedia, the Chilean experiences that were translated into the US. But could you be a little bit more specific or give a more focused example? For instance, you mentioned about the Estonian experience on elections. How could a cooperation, let's say, foundation like us could work together with your project, with your challenge? Should we work on a new version of what we are doing for the US, or could we show what we are doing right here in different steps of the participation ladder?
Yeah, so I certainly wouldn't say we would have expectations that your project somehow move into the U.S. and that you all move your project into the U.S. What I was referring to is that your project might provide some sort of opportunity for us to learn in the U.S., right? And for folks who are in the U.S. trying to work in that context, that there might be some sort of opportunity if you're having success, if you're learning things, that learning could potentially be beneficial to people working in a different context and applicable in those spaces, right? So that's the thing that I'm more concerned with, not that you are moving your project physically into the U.S., but instead that either through the abstraction of software potentially that some of you are working on to make it easier for people to actually use components of the software in other contexts, or simply learning about what you're doing. I think that can be just as beneficial. You know, so the example I gave about Poteropedia, we don't expect that Poteropedia is going to launch in the U.S. and start tracking U.S. Officials. We're much more comfortable of them working in Chile where they're at now and doing a good job there. They have expanded. They've expanded to Colombia and another country, so they're in 3 countries now. But they've stayed in South America where they have much stronger networks, and that's fine. I still think there's a tremendous amount that we can learn from the work that they're doing, and we have folks in the U.S. that are doing some similar work anyhow. So it's probably better that the folks that are in the U.S. be doing that work.
All right. So. Okay, Javier? Okay. So Phil Wolf has joined us from Open Oakland, and eDemocracy is the fiscal agent of Open Twin Cities. So we're a big fan of Code for America Brigades. So Phil, from the West Coast, early there. Hope you're awake. What kind of question do you have for Chris?
I had 2. One had to do with the popularity contest on the site. How much does that matter? And in the first stage or the second stage? Thank you. And the other question had to do with the kinds of risks associated with that we should be taking or that you're looking for. So for instance, you know, there's technology risks. Are we doing something new and technically? Are there organizational risks or application? Are we doing something that hasn't been done before? Organizational risks, are we like, you know, are we really stable or new, or what's your sense on the kinds of risks we could or should be taking?
Yeah. So let me address the first question first. As far as popularity contests, obviously the platform has an applause button and it has a comment. and some people will go to Twitter and try to get people to show support for their project. We don't factor that in at all. We're really looking at the quality of the idea, and then as we sort of whittle through those ideas, we look closer at the quality of the team and the people who are going to be executing the project. So that sort of thing that's available on the platform, we're not taking into account. In fact, we've removed some features. Previously, you could sort by how much applause a project has gotten, and we just didn't find that to be really valuable to us. On the risk part, you know, Knight Foundation, you know, we consider ourselves a catalytic funder, and what that means to us is that we are trying to spur innovation, have people working on new solutions to existing problems. So certainly we are interested in risk in the sense that, yeah, you are trying something new. We're helping you take those risks and try something new. We want those to be educated risks. We certainly want you to do your best to learn as you go and make responsible pivots down the road if they're necessary, and those sorts of things. And another way we look at risk is we've actually created something called the Prototype Fund that I manage, that in addition to the larger awards that we give through the challenge, which are grants typically from $100,000 to $500,000, we also give smaller prototype grants to folks who are at an earlier stage on an idea. So these grants are smaller, $35,000 grants. They allow folks to quickly test one or two key assumptions and start to put stuff in front of actual humans and make sure that they're serving the needs of the folks that they had hoped. So that's another approach that we take to help mitigate some of that risk, but still push people to experiment and try new things. And so those are 6 months grants, and then at the end of those grants, we bring people back together and take another look at the projects, and for ones that we see momentum, we sometimes provide more support.
Thanks.
So, very good. Isel, please introduce yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Isel. I'm from Guatemala. I work at an organization named Red Ciudadana, which translates as Citizen Network. Our mission is the strengthening of democracy in the country through ICTs, and we promote civic participation and accountability. Right now, we have an upcoming electoral process in September of this year, primaries and generals general election on the same day. We are planning to use Your Next MP, which has already been mentioned in this conversation, and we want to build this free public database to be used in the election. The main goal of this project is that it can work for others. We are working with Argentina to do the project, and what we want is that every country through America can be able to use this code that will be formulated through the project. We want the database to be reusable, and what we see is that through this project we can inform voters, we can increase the civic participation, and we also can empower the citizens and produce information for further accountability projects, for example. So my question will be if there are other requirements for non-US organization projects. For example, if we should include a plan for or a more detailed document about the replication of this project in the US?
I don't think that's necessary. I think I think we're typically able to see, you know, if you're expressing the desire to make it reusable by others, either from a code standpoint or simply as a model, I think that's fine. We don't need a plan for doing that unless that's something you really want to execute on.
Well, I've been inspired by both the answers, but also the questions. So thank you, everyone. So I'm Steve Clift. I get my chance now to ask a question. I'm the executive director of eDemocracy, and a little over 20 years ago, 1994, eDemocracy, Minnesota eDemocracy, then was the world's very first election information website. So I've seen cycle after cycle of sort of a boom-bust cycle, if you will. So people get really excited about elections, and then it all collapses. And so I actually have some mini questions that I want to kind of pull together here because I'm really interested in the sustainability question. So the two one quick question. In the past, you've mentioned digital very frequently in your briefs. You don't mention digital as much. And also, I don't know about the word about open source, whether that is open source is required or not. So that's my first quick question. And the second is you also mentioned governments in here. So I'm just curious, like, how important is government involvement to you? And I'll leave it at that.
So government involvement's not necessarily important for individual projects, right? That really depends on what you're trying to achieve. We know, having some of our past civic technology projects, one of the hardest things is, for example, if your idea is we're going to sell software to the government, it's not easy, right? That's a hard task to take on. Or if we need certain kinds of government cooperation, that can also be tricky. So certainly there's no requirement that you're working directly with government. The mention, I think, of government in this brief is that we're actually open, in addition to nonprofit and for-profit organizations. We're interested in ideas directly from government. If they have ways that they want to try to make the election process better for citizens. So we're certainly interested in those elections offices that are working on these problems, and some of them aren't very technical for that matter. As to the question of sort of digital and technology, obviously, yes, we have in the past certainly funded a lot of technology and tools and digital stuff, and I don't think that won't be the case in the future. But also, you know, the root of what we're interested in is certainly innovation and really thinking about how do we make elections better, how do we make communities more informed, and certainly technology is not the only answer as far as ways to do that. And from my viewpoint, you know, thinking about data and technology and those sorts of things, all of those tools really are quite useless if we're not able to understand the wants, needs, and desires of the people that we're trying to serve. So we're much more interested in projects that maybe they have a technology capacity, but they understand the folks that they're trying to serve on the ground, and the fears, the needs, and the reality of those folks as far as adopting that technology, or adopting a service, or an educational opportunity, or anything else, right? So there are lots of things that we can take a look at. You know, if you look at journalism, one of the things that has been really a useful thing in the journalism industry over the last couple of years have been things like events, right? So like the non-technical thing has been a way that folks are building new revenue streams and connecting with new audiences in ways that they haven't in the past. Mm-hmm. So certainly we're interested in those things, but again, it's an innovation challenge, so it's about what is the new model, what is the new thing that you're trying, how are we going to learn from it, and so if it succeeds, what is its potential to scale and really change and move the needle on the way that we do elections in the U.S. and beyond.
Well, thanks for that. I thought maybe I noticed you mentioned innovation frame, which is a little bit more than a digital frame, so I appreciate that clarification. Quickly, if you do code, is open source required or preferred?
Sure, not at all. So we have several different funding mechanisms, and it really comes down to the individual projects. In the past, some of you may know about our enterprise fund. We funded things out of the News Challenge through our enterprise fund. That's a VC investment, so that's for folks who are running startups and are actively going through an investment round. So we have opportunities there. There's not an open source requirement. We do love open source, so if you're doing work in the open source community, we would love for it to be open source, but it's not a requirement of the challenge.
So I knew this format would work pretty well to use up most of our time, but I didn't realize we'd only have 8 minutes left at the end. What I'd like to do, Chris, if you could just have your little notepad ready, I just want to give 4 people who are still on the call here, Hangout, a chance to ask a question. We'll pile them up and then give you the last word. Does that sound good?
Sure.
All right. So who's just pipe up if you're ready to add a question to Chris's list that he'll answer at the end. Who'd like to bring another question on the table? Phil, I see you unmuted there. Are you ready to ask a question?
No, sorry, not yet.
That's all right. Others, don't be shy. Otherwise, you'll let me ask questions, or your last question. Anyone else have a big question? I thought we did a good job covering a wide range. So let me ask this question. Let me just look at the list here. Find a good one. Go ahead.
I do have a question.
All right, Phil. Thank you. You saved me.
What are like the top 3 to 5 gaffes or mistakes that people make in application that disqualify them?
Not things that don't disqualify folks, but here's a phrase I might ask you to avoid, advise you to avoid. If you're building a one-stop shop, likelihood is that you're wrong. We're talking about a very distributed media ecosystem. We're less interested in one-stop shops that are trying to solve everybody's problems all at once, and more interested in folks who are really looking at specific audiences and understanding those needs, because we think they'll be more successful if they can key in on a group or a few groups of people that they really understand and can create something that actually ties into the way their life works, because trying to build something for everybody is a really hard task. So that's one thing that I would advise, like really understand the specific problem that you're trying to solve rather than the general, right? So I think one of the things we'll see, hit this button, one of the things that we'll see in this challenge is obviously lots of people who are addressing civic engagement as a general concept, and while that's fantastic, and I think it's great that people are out there trying to spur something called civic engagement. We're more interested into the actual actions that are going to happen in the world. So if you can tell us what those are and how your thing will lead to those actions, I think that's a better bet.
Excellent. So I do have, Chris, one last question. Is there anyone else in the panel who wanted to put a question on the pile? So let me put my questions on the pile, and I'll come back and give one more chance. I would just like to have you explain then, once the deadline hits, who actually reviews the proposals? Like, how many eyeballs will go onto each proposal? And then what are the role of the different funders? So you mentioned at the beginning there were other funders involved. So will they be helping review? And the last little question is, when do you put a dollar amount to an idea?
Sure. So the timeline is sort of laid out on the challenge platform. You can see it's sort of a thermometer thing across the top once you click into the challenge. So after the deadline, we go into a feedback phase, and that feedback phase is where we have our initial set of reviewers taking a look at these applications. We have a dozen folks helping us out at that stage. They range from people who are involved in civic technology, people who come from the journalism field, people that just know a lot about this stuff, to occasionally, wild cards, people who just generally are in touch with exciting ideas that are happening in the world. Those folks help us narrow it down to usually about 50 or so semifinalists. So at the end of that feedback phase, we move on about 50 applications. Those go in front of another group of 15 to 18 reviewers. They will then they actually come down to Miami and meet with us in person and talk about those 50 projects, and through that process help us decide who we might talk to in person. And then we go out on the road, myself and other members of the team, to talk to folks in cities across the U.S., because we really think it's important that we get to know the teams, and we benefit a lot from that face-to-face interaction. So overall, we have 30 or so folks helping us out as advisors on this. At the end of the day, it's Knight Foundation and our trustees that make the decision on who the winners are. We are relying quite a bit on our partners in this. They'll be sitting at the table with us in each of these stages and helping us make decisions on who moves forward as well through those stages. And they'll also be involved after the fact, coming together with us and the winners and being part of that community. So certainly there's a lot of folks who are helping us hopefully make great choices, and if you do submit something, you might be likely to receive questions from some of those folks directly on the platform. So we do encourage, especially in that first round where we're whittling down to semifinalists, the readers and reviewers to actually leave comments and ask questions to you on the platform. We don't guarantee that each project will receive one of those kinds of questions, but where there are questions or comments that the folks have, we encourage them to interact publicly with you all on the challenge platform.
Well, thank you, Chris. We've hit our hour limit here. I just want to give you one last chance to, if you have any concluding remarks. Let me just say, for those who are watching, if you go to poplus.org and go to the Get Involved page, you can find out about more of this Poplus network if that's new to you around collaborative civic coding. We have an online group where we do a lot of exchange, and where you see some of the people who are here are actually talking about ways to collaborate, not just on Knight News Challenge proposals, but just in general with civic tech. The other thing I'll mention is that I'll ask all the different panelists that have been on the call here to go to the Google Plus event page and add sort of any links that they would like to their project or to their proposal if they do one as well, just as a way for those who are watching this to find some linkages to some of the things that they've mentioned, because this will be new to lots of people. So Chris, one last chance to comment, and any closing remarks that you'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah. So we have we do sort of virtual office hours like this for folks that have questions throughout the process. I believe the next opportunity, if you want to get onto a video chat again, if you come up with some new questions, is March 17th. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing what you all come up with and seeing those ideas on the platform and in the challenge.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, all the panelists today. It's been a wonderful chance to do a Q&A. So thank you, Knight Foundation, and the other sponsors. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Take it easy, everyone.